Before settling in Australia, Sanjeev Sabhlok held senior roles in the Indian Administrative Service, including as Deputy Commissioner of a State District, Professor of Management at a National Academy of Administration and Public Policy, and a Commissioner to a state government in northeastern India. Sanjeev was a National Science Talent Scholar and holds a Bachelor of Science, 2 Masters in Economics, a postgraduate diploma in business and a doctorate in economics from the University of Southern California. Since March 2001, Sanjeev held roles in the Victorian government and more recently as an economist in the Department of Treasury and Finance. Sanjeev resigned from his Treasury role on the 10th of September, and that was to protest the outrageous violations of liberty and good policy by the Daniel Andrews government. Sanjeev, nice to catch up with you once again.
Thank you, Mike, for having me back. It was a pleasure meeting you the first time.
And a lot's happened. There's been little criticism of our governments, either state or federal, during the pandemic. Should there have been more debate about policy decisions?
Absolutely, you're spot on. I think the whole thing seems to have been, as I've written in a recent article, which I presented at the Samuel Griffith Society on the 8th of October. We have a significant collapse of all the institutions in Australia. And that includes the media, but not just the media, but the public service, the courts themselves possibly. And the governments as a whole have, failed. And that's why I call my book that I've just put out, and it's available now on Kindle, The Great Hysteria and the Broken State. So we've had a broken state. The institutions have failed. People aren't asking questions. The media is not asking questions. I've actually pinged the media, and in fact, there are good people in the media who have asked a number of questions, but it's as a whole, the media has not bothered to actually dig into the actual laws and the pandemic plans and the documents that were available publicly. And they never bothered to check whether these measures were either scientifically approved, legally approved, ethically approved, or in any way published, the arguments published, which is a requirement under the laws, that none of this should be kept secret, the justifications for all these measures. So we've had a very significant collapse. And what I've told the Samuel Griffith Society is that, look, even the Constitution, where Bill of Rights protects the citizens, like in the USA, we've seen failures there. Finally, the courts have woken up and said this whole thing is unconstitutional. But we've got a Magna Carta and common law-based society here in Australia. And we only depend upon institutions. And that includes, obviously, the media as one of the key institutions.
If media isn't leading debate and experts then don't speak up, what can be done?
Well, this is where I think the media's picked sides. Media's taken sides from the very beginning. There are experts, and I think people like Sunitra Gupta, people like Anders Tegnell, who is one of the most experienced infectious disease specialists in the entire world, Johan Giseke, Martin Kulldorff, John Ioannidis, and the list is pretty much endless of these extraordinarily competent experts who have been raising alarm about this for the last 6 months. I haven't seen the media pick it up. We've unfortunately been forced to look around elsewhere on various blogs and other places for the experts' opinions. So the experts have spoken out. The issue has been the media's picked sides, and they've actually decided that we'll only use the experts that the government approves. And that's been the big issue here for the media.
Professor Martin Kulldorff of Harvard Medical School talked of the costs of suppressing the virus, the need for evidence-based approaches to public health. Tell me this, is anyone in any level of government in Australia acknowledging this?
I'm sure there are a lot of people within the government, and I speak from personal knowledge that a lot of economists within my team were extraordinarily concerned about these policies. Now, the problem is that we are mid-level economists. I was VPS 6, which is a senior level, but not the executive. And the executives ultimately drive the advice to the ministers. So I believe the answer is yes, there's a lot of concern. In fact, I spoke to somebody from the department yesterday on a different matter, not the economist, and the person was also very deeply concerned about this whole thing. So there's a lot of people from the legal fraternity, economic fraternity within the government who are seeing this thing basically completely inconsistent with our laws and principles and everything. And yet the idea that they're not speaking up or maybe not advising the government adequately is the concern, which I'm actually going to write about this very shortly in an open letter to my own departmental secretary, asking him how could he possibly allow this to happen. So yes, this information is widely known. It's not only widely known, Mike. What I've actually explained in that Samuel Griffith Society article is that this is actually a requirement of our own pandemic plan in Victoria. The 10th March pandemic plan of Victoria, which I discovered later, probably a bit later after talking to you last time, actually explicitly states that the focus must be on the basis of evidence. And we can see that in the COVID case, that is actually updated for COVID-19. In the case of COVID, the plan actually says we will focus on the high risk age groups, which is basically the elderly. And it actually has it all explicitly worked out. It doesn't talk about lockdowns, universal lockdowns. It doesn't talk about curfews. It doesn't talk about waiting indefinitely for a vaccine, and so on. So basically, our plans were disbanded and discarded. So look, it's very challenging situation, Mike. I believe it's a broken state. The state has failed.
Professor Kuldoff also said, Sanjeev, among my colleagues who I spoke with who are infectious disease epidemiologists, the majority are in favour of an age-targeted strategy. A minority are in favour of lockdowns and contact tracing. So, Sanjeev, how do we rush headlong into lockdowns and commit basically economic suicide on the basis of expert advice? Who were our experts?
Yes, I think this is a very deep question, and I think it'll be the focus of future royal commissions that will have to be established. In my book, I've actually got a complete chapter in which I drill down into the possible pathway, which starts from Neil Ferguson's model and the panic and hysteria generated from it. And there are and I've argued that there are two types of epidemiologists in this world. The first of them are actually medical doctors. They've been trained at great depth in the medical sciences. They're actual doctors. They practice as doctors. And therefore, they understand the Hippocratic Oath and that they must not do any harm. And then there are some other good people who are not necessarily doctors, like Sunetra Gupta, but who are very good from their insides. And then there are these mathematical people who are epidemiologists as well, who only are trained in models. For them, people are just numbers. They do not have any ethical understanding. They don't understand the limitations of the Universal Declaration of Bioethics in the United Nations. They don't understand the Nuremberg Code. They don't understand anything to do with ethics. They are the most unethical people you can imagine. And that's why I've called for a reset of the epidemiological discipline for ensuring that epidemiologists must be trained in ethics. And so what we're seeing is the immoral people who created the hysteria, people like Neil Ferguson, the people who are then continuously failed. Their models failed within 10 days, within 15 days. Their models had completely failed. They were predicting 90,000 deaths in Sweden and I think about 60,000 by mid-April. They saw 3,000 deaths in Sweden by mid-April without lockdowns. Neil Ferguson did not apologize. The man has got no moral principles. These are the kind of principles, people, however, Mike, that the government and the media have listened a lot to. And I think we could have easily sorted this rubbish kind of, experts, so-called experts, from the genuine experts. And by the way, these experts that you refer to, they've just issued the Great Barrington Declaration, which is, thousands of, genuine doctors and experts saying that this is really wrong, what you're doing. So we've got, within Victoria, we've got a COVID network, over 500 doctors saying this is not the way medical science is practiced. So we've actually seen a lot of experts, and maybe, the vast majority, as you rightly say, but those who have medical training and who understand that they must not cause harm, because these lockdowns are causing an inordinate amount of harm. I think they're talking about 1 million people in Victoria, the headlines today. 1 million have now sought and obtained mental health in the last 6 months. Mental health, 1 million out of 6 million people have sought treatment. Now look at the kind of chaos and destruction being caused, not just economic, which you referred to, but this is an ethical issue. This is basically, in my view, I call it, in my book, Public Health Terrorism. and there are good reasons for that. But I'm also drafting a complaint to the International Criminal Court because I've checked the Article 7 of the Roman Statute on whatever the crimes against humanity. This is perfectly fits the description of crimes against humanity, which are also about mass scale mental health issues. So I believe that these people, the institutions, have failed to protect us from these crimes against humanity by these experts who are mathematicians for whom people are mere numbers. And they do not have any ethical sense. Whereas people like Kulldorff, as you rightly said, and by the way, Martin Kulldorff has been supporting my work and my articles I've been publishing for 6 months on Times of India. He's been actively supporting with me. He's in constant touch with me. Okay. So we've got really good people that I've been working with, that they've been talking about these issues. And look, sadly, the governments have failed. The media has failed. And what can be done about this, Mike? This is a big challenge. That's for the last 1 month since resigning, I've actually taken it upon myself to do something about it. And I've set up a Liberate Victoria website with got a lot of information, liberatevictoria.org. A lot of information I'm pouring out there. I put a strategy out there. I'm working on different fronts in order to make sure that this can be dealt with, because I can't take this lying down, unfortunately, Mike.
So how do we fix things in Victoria, for example, if the same people are in charge?
Oh, well, the people personally, I have nothing against them. I actually believe they're good people. I have, it's very easy for good people to get misled and get hysterical. So what's happened is I call the great hysteria in my book. This is the biggest hysteria in the history of mankind on earth. Okay, there's nothing on this scale ever on a global level, except Sweden, of course. Now, what we're seeing here is once people get triggered, once people get triggered, including all these premiers like Daniel Andrews or secretaries of departments, once they get mentally triggered, they shut down. Okay, they freeze. It's a freeze. The fear response leads to fleeing the situation, shutting down the mind, and not thinking anymore. It's our natural response, evolutionary response. They're all suffering very hyper activated limbic system. They're behaving like little frightened whatever, rats or whatever you can call it.
Children.
Animals. They're behaving like like children who have been frightened. They're not behaving like men or like women. They're not behaving like adults who can actually apply their frontal lobe and start thinking rationally, which is what I argue in my book. The first thing, that when the government was required to think critically, it actually just blanked out.
Look, tell us, if somebody wants to find out more about your book, how do we do that? And where do we go to find out more?
It's on Kindle right now. It was a print edition was available last week. Now it's on Kindle, and so I drafted this book very rapidly in just 10 days. It's a short, crisp, but very comprehensive book that covers the moral issues, the economic issues, the scientific issues, the legal issues. So as a complete package. But then on top of that, you should read my Samuel Griffith article, which is, as I said, linked on my website as well, the liberatevictoria.org, where I believe I've added some more information based on further research, which is not in the book. So this is a constant exercise of learning, Mike. I'm getting so much information, a flood of information from people who are providing me lots of useful leads, which I'm consolidating inside this brain and trying to shove it out there as a consolidated package. So I'm working on 3 different things at the moment. I've got a complete Liberate Victoria strategy that's on the website, and I'm working on different parts of the strategy, Mike, to make sure that we don't take this lying down, because if we do that, this is not going away. And we need to, first of all, de-escalate the hysteria. So I'm writing a 2-page pamphlet, which I hope can be widely circulated in the community, so that people start stop thinking of this, because as I said, 13 people out of 100,000 so far have died in the entire world. 1 out of 7,594. 13 out of 100,000. So I said, okay, look at the MCG. A full house MCG has got 100,000 people. 13 of them go missing. Of them, most of them are above the age of 84. At the same time, while 13 went missing for COVID-19 in the world, at the same time, around 8 of them went missing for the flu, because flu takes 650,000 deaths, lives per year. So when we are looking at this whole thing, we're starting to see people getting hysterical about something that's such a small exercise in the big scheme of things. In Sweden, about less than 6,000 people have died, and then annually they have 90,000 people dying on a normal basis. In fact, the data can't show us the difference this year's deaths versus the last 5 years' death. There is no statistical difference. This has been one of the most minor, relatively minor pandemics. It is definitely not in the range of Spanish flu. It might have a little bit of a minor ripple, like a second wave of some sort, a minor one, but it doesn't seem to be going anywhere close to Spanish flu. So first of all, I think we need to make the people unhysterical, stop them from being crazy kind of thing, getting frightened. And that's one of the first jobs I'm trying to do. Once that's done, then they need to start getting back to their original risk-based approaches, which is, by the way, embedded. It's part of the DNA of Victorian administration and governance. And also, by the way, across Australia. We have forgotten that all of a sudden. It seems to have gone overboard. We just went hysterical. That's the only word that applies in this case, unfortunately.
Sanjeev, we need more noise from people like yourself. Brilliant chatting. Sanjeev, thank you very much.
Pleasure, Mike. Thank you very much.